Welcome to Beyond Compliance, how organizations are actually making accessibility stick. Global Accessibility Awareness Day is always about getting everyone thinking and learning about digital access and inclusion, raising awareness within organizations. But for many organizations, the real challenge isn't awareness, it's execution. Across public sector, financial services, and commercial organizations, accessibility is now driven by a mix of regulation, consumer duty, reputational risk, and growing user expectation. Yet despite this, many teams still struggle to move beyond one-off audits and isolated fixes. That's why we wanted to focus on this topic today. We often see a gap between intent and reality. Most organizations care about accessibility, which is great, and many have done audits, defined standards, even built it into their design principles. But over time, things start to slip. That's what we've been calling accessibility drift, where well-intentioned organizations see standards erode over time, not through neglect, but more through the reality of how digital products are actually built and maintained. Alongside that, there's a second challenge, how accessibility is measured and managed. A lot of organizations still rely on periodic audits, a snapshot at the moment in time. The risk of that is that this can create a false sense of confidence. You pass an audit, but 6 months later, the experience can be very different. So the real question becomes, how do you move from good intentions and point-in-time activity to something that actually sticks? And how do you embed accessibility into delivery in a way that holds up over time across teams, platforms, and suppliers? In this webinar, we're fortunate to have leaders from very different sectors who can share a bit about how they are embedding accessibility into real delivery environments, including what has worked, what hasn't, and where they're still figuring things out. So let's see who's here. Can we please start with some introductions? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your role in your organization, and a bit about the accessibility journey in your organization.
For the introduction, Chris. Excited to be here. My name is Jessica. I'm a principal design researcher at Lloyds Banking Group, focusing specifically on Scottish widows and our insurance, pensions, and investment products there. I was community of practice lead for design research for 2 years, where I worked and continue to work very closely with a team of inclusive design specialists to make sure that accessibility is baked into how we do design research, how we engage with customers, and how we create better products and services.
Very good, thank you. And Sally.
Yes, hello. Thank you for asking me to be here today. I'm the user experience lead here at Registers of Scotland. We look after 21 registers just now, including the oldest register in the world, which was set up in 1617 alongside Registers of Scotland. Predominantly, the registers look after land data and information, and the team work closely across these different registers and multidiscipline teams here at Registers, trying to make that information just more accessible to our customers and in support of the economy in Scotland.
Great. Thanks very much, Sally. And my colleague Keith, can you just give a bit of an introduction to yourself and the kind of things you do in your role and what you and your team undertake?
Certainly, Chris. My name is Keith. I'm the Principal Accessibility Consultant at UserVision, and we work with organisations across multiple sectors to embed accessibility. We do this through the likes of services like accessibility audits, usability testing with disabled participants. We do consultancy and training for multiple roles as well. We try to move beyond compliance as well and see how we can actually improve products and services for our clients to make a real impact on the users that are engaging with their digital products. And I've had the pleasure of working with both Sally and Jessica on recent projects as well.
Very good. Okay. Well, let's get into it. I think a good place to start is what's actually driving accessibility in your different organizations. Obviously, there's a wide variety of interest and people doing something about accessibility. And what's actually driving accessibility in your organization today?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, we've got regulation, of course, with the public sector accessibility regulations 2018. And of course, we have to have accessibility statements across all of our services. So yes, follow that. But I came into Registers in 2019. I've picked up the baton, I think, from people before me who've left certainly their footprint on getting this accessibility. And I'll use the phrase, the baked in phrase. as we began our digital transformation over 10 years ago. So I'm kind of continuing that. And for me, it's the people that really I work with. So yes, we would obviously have to comply. But there's just this kind of heart and willingness to make our services easier for customers to use, because we know government services and data can be it's confusing. We obviously try and make them as simple as possible. But without the teams, I think, working together, it's our tester team, it's our product team, it's our business analysis, it's obviously our team, our user-centric design team, all really working hand in glove with each other through the development lifecycle to deliver something at the end that is more accessible for our customers. So couldn't do it without the team around us at Registers.
Okay, very good. Jessica, how about you? What's the driver there at LBG?
My answer is really similar to Sally's. To be honest, it's both top down and bottom up. So compliance is definitely an issue. We're committed to being WCAG AA compliant in all our digital products and services. Consumer duty, of course, also plays a role in the attention that we need to pay to vulnerable customers, including customers whose vulnerability comes from a health condition or an accessibility need. One of our corporate values is we are inclusive, we embrace everyone, we create experiences that everybody can take advantage of. But like Sally said, it's the people, it's the passionate evangelists who are kind of dotted around the organization, the people who are our in-house experts who really feel very strongly that everything, like that accessibility and inclusive design needs to be baked into everything we do. And without them, it would be corporate principles and regulations. So it's finding that right mix, and it's making sure that those voices are heard and amplified and elevated whenever possible, because we're a huge organization and we've got 60,000 colleagues and they're not all up to date on the latest best practices in accessibility and inclusive design. So how do we make that messaging really widespread and make sure everyone's on the same page?
Yeah. Well, you're both fortunate working in organizations where there's a real backing for it. You've got it off the ground. You've got good drivers to taking up accessibility. What about accountability? Once it's up and running, do you have people that are accountable for accessibility, leading in that? And if so, does it ever break down?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think it's top down there. I think we've got people above me, our exec, are all very hugely supportive of what we're doing in the accessibility space. Where it can break down is where it's not visible. And the audits happen, as we've done recently with yourself, Keith, and then it becomes, where is it? What can you see and what can you touch? And I think that's what the story we are now trying to tell inside the organization and bring it to life. So that it can sustain for the coming months and make it real, so we know how near or far we are to some of the findings that came through from those audits, and just make it more tangible for colleagues inside our business.
I think a challenge is often defining what accountability really means. Is accountability knowing where the accessibility challenges are and saying, yes, I commit to fixing these, or is accountability actually fixing them? And that's often the challenge. Is sometimes, we do rely a lot on sort of external audits and assessments to identify things that, we've got absolutely brilliant QE testers who will put everything we release through its paces. We've got a really strong, we've got a sort of end-to-end design system that we're using across all of our brands, and accessibility is baked into those components, but things do still fall through the cracks. Yeah. And there's also the question of the wider, even if something is by the book accessible, ticking all the boxes, is it truly an inclusive experience? Is it meeting the needs of all of our customers? So it's like, once you've got the basics right, that's absolutely brilliant. But then who is accountable for everything that goes beyond that? If something isn't working as intended, or if there's an issue that comes up that isn't necessarily about textbook accessibility, but something just being more difficult for some of our customers to use than it is for others, where does that sit? And I think that's kind of the next evolution and some of the challenges that we all need to work through.
Yeah, it's that difference between technical accessibility and actually it being usable for that audience. Yeah. Really, from your perspective, what does good digital accessibility look like? Do you think you've got a vision of that, and do you think that's a commonly shared vision in the organization, Sally?
I think it changes, doesn't it? It's because I think customers are changing all the time. The tech is changing. We're dealing with AI at the moment. We're looking at how we can embed that on some of our experiences and our processes. And that brings another challenge. It's how does that work for our customers and around accessibility? And those are conversations that we've started having inside the business just now, because we're realizing in some ways, because you can make things, automate things now and use AI, what does that journey look like? It's almost collapsing the journeys in some ways.
Okay.
So it's trying to make sure you are building trust around when we are using AI, I think, inside those processes, and are those things still accessible? And actually, it's more important now than ever to do your customer journeys and to use your personas. So, well, whilst you see in the press just now, AI is the end for UX. Absolutely not, because design can make AI accountable now, as far as we can see, and I think it's actually going to probably breathe new life, I think, into the industry once we get past the hype, of course.
How about for you, Jess, with good digital accessibility?
So it's making sure that people have the choices to engage with us in the ways that are best for them. And I think AI is such an interesting example because it's going to create another engagement channel, isn't it? It's not going to replace using an app or phoning up or going into a branch, or it's going to be another route, and it's making sure we're keeping really clear sight of that. They have the opportunity to meet the needs of so much more than our Gen Z customers who are super excited about using AI. And that's a huge oversimplification because we know there's cracks there as well. But what are the opportunities that conversational interfaces present for older adults as well? How can we make it part of our sort of network of more accessible interfaces?
Yeah. And Keith, you've worked with a wide variety of clients. What type of things that you've seen that has helped the clients to create good accessible design? And what are some of the challenges? There's always this area between good intentions and aspirations, and then the reality of working in certain sectors and the development environment, product development and delivery. What have been some of the challenges that you've seen clients facing and ways to overcome them?
So we've worked with a variety of clients, as you mentioned, in various sectors, and the initial starting point is usually with an audit. So it gives us a good benchmark to understand where they currently sit in terms of accessibility for a selection of representative samples. Now, there's accessibility management frameworks like the ISO 30071 Part 1 and the WCAG, the W3C accessibility maturity model, which helps organizations embed accessibility organizationally. Now, the places that we normally see where accessibility falls down is usually not around a malintent from individuals who want to, exclude 25% of the population from being able to use their service. It's often from organizational pressures. It's from accessibility being deprioritized due to deadlines and competing priorities. And often what we see is that accessibility is introduced too late in the product development life cycle. And that's where we come in to do the audits just before a product's away to be sent live. And as a result, these accessibility fixes are having to be retrofitted, which is often timely and expensive.
Yeah, I think there's still a tendency to go tech first. Let's get the tech spec, and then that's really, you need to be in there. I think obviously with the requirements around accessibility, your service design hat on, thinking UCD and really what matters to the customer when you're thinking about that tech build. And I think more than ever with AI on the horizon as well. Just great to get UCD people in there up front.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, there's also the challenge of maintaining a website or any digital platform. And I mentioned earlier this concept of, we call it accessibility drift. And that's the idea that without continuous monitoring, that accessibility standards do have a risk of gradually degrading. Is this a challenge that you've experienced or faced in your organizations, anyone?
Yeah, you've got roadmaps, you're competing with priorities inside the business, as Keith has mentioned. Yeah, it's a constant kind of thing that happens, I suppose. And naturally within a business, there are demands and competing demands. And that's where and Jessica has mentioned it, the evangelists come into play. They come to the front. They keep that heartbeat going around accessibility. And that's really what we've seen over the last few years. Just keep it alive, make sure that we've got a great testing team. They're working closely with our developers, with our product team, everything, the chain. There's a ripple effect through the chain that is still trying to focus around accessibility, in light of the competing demands as well. So it's a constant challenge. You've always, I think, got to be going the way.
Part of it for us has been creating a culture where accessibility is prioritized and valued. I know, Keith, I know you know all about this, but we did some trainings with our community of design researchers and to make sure that they were all sort of on the same page in terms of the focus was on neurodivergence and enabling and supporting better research with a neurodiverse set of research participants. And what we did by running this repeatedly for a couple of years is try to really create this culture where it becomes something that's just part of how we do business, that all of our researchers are prioritizing it, are looking to make sure that they're recruiting neurodivergent participants whenever they're running research, that they're aware of the limitations of doing research that doesn't include a wider range of participants. And it's become something that now we've got experts who've gone ahead and run with this. We've got, the majority of our researchers have received this training, and it's helping us sort of future-proof against, because we see along with organizational drift, there's sort of personnel drift. People don't stay in the same role forever. They move on. We grow the team. We contract the team. We grow the team again. So it's how do we make sure that these priorities are kept alive and kept vibrant? And I know it's something we've been trying to do on a wider organizational scale as well. So each year, for the past couple of years, there's been sort of an inclusive customer focus that the organization has pushed forward, and we've had extensive trainings and conversations. So last year it was neurodiversity. This year it's domestic abuse and specifically economic abuse. And it's making sure that everybody is aware of some of the issues, having these conversations. So it's just kind of moving us forward as we're creating new experiences and making sure that these are things we're thinking about from the outset. And it all adds up. And it's the challenge then is it's impossible to have every new joiner go through weeks and weeks of training on everything they need to know about creating more inclusive customer experiences. But the hope is somebody's going into a team and, well, that's already baked in. That's already part of their business as usual. So it becomes something that you've got your resources there, you've got your standard practices and ways of working, and all of these things continue and perpetuate. And it's as automatic as, well, we need to make sure something's usable. Obviously, we all know something needs to be usable. Well, it also needs to be accessible, and it needs to be accessible and inclusive in these specific ways. And we're on a journey, making sure that this knowledge is embedded and always looking to, well, what do our teams need to know next and next and next, and how can we predict the future? And I've certainly got my eye on AI and what are the things that we need to know about both the opportunities and the risks of engaging with conversational interfaces. So we'll see what the future brings. There's always something that I think is the challenge. This I think is where a lot of people throw up their hands and say there's just too much.
Yeah.
Well, there isn't really. It is all part of being really customer centered, really human centered. Like, this is the job.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Well, I mean, you were really talking about what I'd call like having a good culture there, and really trying to develop and maintain a culture is probably one of the best things you can do. Any other examples, from Keith or Sally about how do companies build this kind of culture to be inclusive and accessible?
I guess we've got the benefit of GDS, Government Design System, and the Scottish Government Design System. So there's a wealth of training there for our researchers, and a clear view. So that's a constant for us in our team. And one of the things that we've introduced a couple of years ago is the Accessibility Clinic. GDS had set something up, Richard Morton actually. So we'd gone and attended a couple of those, and we've set our own up from five or 6 years ago now. We run it in conjunction with one of our colleagues in Scottish Government, and it's monthly. It's a place teams can come in to share a wee conundrum, a code conundrum, or just a general component chit chat. There's some disagreement in a team. It's just a place to bring that kind of, if somebody just can't agree what the technical decision is on that particular component, they can come into this safe space and just chat through, share their screen, show us what they're talking about, and share our views with the Scottish Government colleagues. So works really well. And again, it's back to what I was talking about earlier. It's that momentum, keeping that pulse going around the topic of accessibility, as well as absorbing everything that we have coming through from GDS and obviously ScotGov as well.
Yeah. And how about you, Keith? You've probably seen a variety. That clinic idea sounds great. What other ways have been good ways to build the culture?
Building up the culture. So that does sound like a great thing that's already in place at Registers in Scotland. What we find to be really successful to raise awareness and to raise empathy is to do empathy workshops and also sitting in on usability testing sessions with disabled individuals. It gives the observers the opportunity to put themselves in the shoes of the individuals that are perhaps going through a journey and experiencing barriers in real time, and have the impact that has on their experience of using the digital product. In our empathy workshops, we run these with various clients, and we use things like simulation glasses and gloves, and we do screen reader demos and things like this. And again, it all just adds to the empathy to understand, oh, okay, maybe I'm not just navigating this site using a mouse or click and point and using my eyes to be able to engage with everything. Maybe I have to rely on the keyboard to engage with this digital product. As Jessica mentioned, there's upskilling the team, having that baseline of knowledge and delivering training to various roles, to organizations including designers, developers, testers and management teams as well, to help them understand what is required, why are we doing this, what is the importance of this. So it's about building empathy, raising awareness and upskilling individuals so they know what is required of them within their own role.
Very good. And in terms of trying to get some ownership and buy-in from other stakeholders to keep the momentum going for improving accessibility from senior stakeholders, how have you found the most effective ways to do that? And once it's going, keeping it visible, how do you keep accessibility visible?
Storytelling, sharing the stories. And we did research with Keith's team last year around accessibility, and there were participants there that some of us will never forget. And the output of that research, we were able to share their stories inside the organizations and inside our organization rather. And that's what makes and can help accessibility stick inside the business. And we'll carry some of those people, I think, with us for a long time and their story. So that piece of work was very significant for us in moving accessibility forward.
It's storytelling, absolutely. And sometimes the stories that stick are the ones that combine the qual, the quant, and the regulation. So you've got the story, you've got the participant video clips, you've got the actual lived experiences, like those things that really sort of tug at people's heartstrings, seeing somebody struggling with something they cannot use because it isn't designed for them. And then combining that with the quant, that this isn't an isolated case, especially working in financial services, people are very numbers focused. Numbers are important. So being able to draw those parallels, well, this may not sort of chime with your personal experience, but we know that this percentage of UK adults are likely to have this type of experience because we know rates of neurodiversity. We know rates of sort of low literacy, low numeracy, English as a second language. We can pull out those kinds of statistics and say, yes, we saw this person struggle. And we can also predict that this percentage of our customers will struggle with the same thing in the same way. And, consumer duty, not meeting our obligations. What's the regulator going to think of this? So that sort of combined story where people have the really personal example that they remember on an emotional level, and then can also make the argument, because that's often what our stakeholders want, is they want to be able to make the case for this being important enough to fix. And if we give them everything they need, our job is done. So it's showing the severity of the issues, but also the frequency that this is, on every sort of metric, this is something that just needs to be better.
We've mentioned drivers before, and it's about tapping into those drivers to really upsell the importance of accessibility within the organisation. Not just do we can mitigate risk by complying with the regulations. We can avoid getting fined. We can have the competitive advantage of making your products accessible to 25% of the population, those that have a lived experience of disability. And there are all these different drivers that can help to influence the buy-in from senior stakeholders. So it's important that we can put a case forward to emphasize these benefits.
And just going beyond raising awareness, how have you tackled the challenge of integrating accessibility into your design systems and processes, which can be somewhat rigid and fixed? And is it something that you can actually seamlessly work in there to these design systems and processes that you have?
We've got an accessibility checklist that we work with that's available on our kind of research or design, our RODS design system. It's there for anyone in the business to access, specifically our testers and developers as well, and the user researchers, so that they have that. It's a very succinct view of the WCAG requirements. You'll know WCAG can actually, ironically, be it's quite a cumbersome piece of text, isn't it? So we've tried to, I think, reduce plain English it really to help some of the teams to manage that piece of work, and it just sits alongside our design system inside ROS as well. And it's automated. It produces a report at the end of it, so that's your accessibility statement populated, and that's been hugely helpful.
Being it baked into a design system is definitely a crucial first step. So we've launched our design systems called Kinkara. You'll see it if you're in sort of retail banking apps. It's kind of Lloyd's brand first, but it's got accessibility built in. So both the designs and the code base, that if you're using Kinkara components, your designs are going to be accessible. But then, of course, it raises the question of, well, what about the things around the edges, the new things that aren't previously covered? New services are being developed. They need new designs, new journeys, new approaches. How do we make sure that there's this continuous feedback loop so that everything that's evolving is just as accessible as the starting point is intended to be? It's catching the things that aren't covered in WCAGs. I know we've mentioned this a few times, like, technically accessible, but still not an optimal experience for people with a range of accessibility needs. So it's giving us the luxury to look a bit more broadly, to think more inclusively, to go beyond, is this technically accessible, to look to, well, what's next? What's most important? And I think it's been reflected in some of the areas of focus we've had. You're looking at neurodiversity, looking at domestic and economic abuse. But it's, the work is never done. So it's, you're like, oh, great. We've accomplished an accessible design system. But it never sleeps. We're never finished making things inclusive.
It's not just about the design system. It's about evaluating the holistic process as a whole, looking at policies, documentation, and making sure that accessibility is baked in at every stage in the product development lifecycle.
Let's start looking ahead to the future. It's rapidly approaching, and looking ahead, do you think there's going to be some things that will influence how organizations actually are managing accessibility? Are there any opportunities for doing that even better?
I think the first one that we are looking into at the moment is code and AI, writing code at the moment. And so therefore, how do you measure that against the accessibility standards that we've got? And how does that work with the components? We use the GDS design system. So how does Code Assist work alongside that? That's this completely new world for us, I think, at the moment, that we're stepping into. So we're just trying to understand and unravel some of that thinking, and as this new tool has been deployed.
I think a lot of organizations are viewing accessibility as more of a marathon rather than a sprint. Okay, so it's something that needs to be monitored over time and managed effectively so that it's not forgotten about. As digital products evolve, there's always new functionality or new pages being added to a digital asset. So it's important that when these are being added, these are being monitored for accessibility. Point-in-time audits are a great way to kind of identify where you are in that moment in time, but in order to manage that effectively, it's really important that we have something in place to monitor your accessibility going forwards. And there's a lot of accessibility automated tools that are available that can do full page scans, full website scans, areas that are behind password protected areas. But it's important that this is also doubled up with the human expertise as well. And that's something that we are developing as a service at the moment called Access 360. It's combining the automated tool for the ongoing monitoring along with that expertise from the human factors to ensure that accessibility, the manual assessment is being looked after.
We need to, like Keith said, we need to make sure we keep the human in the loop, because I think there's a lot of excitement about, this will be another thing the machines can handle for us. We've got an accessible design system. Ooh, we've got all of these shiny AI powered tools. Surely those can tell us. But we know the history of automated testing for accessibility has been mixed. It's that manual review has always been and continues to be essential. It's my worry, and something I really want to guard against, is people just getting lazy and sloppy, thinking, well, everything else, I don't need to keep my skills fresh in this area because the design system's going to take care of it for me, or I'll just use this automated checker and I don't need to know as much about accessibility and inclusive design as maybe I did before, when actually those skills are going to become more and more important, because we're going to have more engagement channels that we need to keep an eye on. We're going to have coding is going to get faster. The teams we work with are going to be able to churn out new things much more quickly than ever before. And we need to make sure that we're ever vigilant in keeping an eye on all of this, because things could very easily run off the rails. So how can we use new tools to help us get things done better, faster, but also make sure that we're providing that same level of oversight to make sure that we're being truly inclusive, that we've got humans testing things, we're not turning everything over to synthetic users, that we still have humans evaluating the things that we're creating. It's going to be an interesting couple of years.
Definitely. It certainly will. Well, we've discussed the challenges of AI and accessibility. What are the areas where it can be beneficial?
So AI has got the potential to enhance accessibility, but it will also have to be very cautious as well. A human review remains essential, as Jessica's mentioned already, especially around usability, context, and cognitive accessibility. That being said, it's ever evolving, and there is AI functionality that is being built into tools like Accessibility Cloud. They've got a feature that can kind of contextualize images and give you generative alt text for those images. Again, if you want to look at the alt text from a marketing perspective, that might vary from that of how the image has been perceived by the AI. Okay, they can also AI has also been helpful with coming up with recommendations for implementations as well, reviewing code bases. So this can also be incorporated into our practices as well. That said, it's always essential that we have that human review and that expertise to ensure that these fixes and these recommendations will actually resolve the problem. That's why you need to kind of double check everything has the change that you've made has actually made an impact and has resolved the issue.
AI can be great for upskilling. We've all got an executive coach at our fingertips now. So if you're somebody who's interested in accessibility and inclusive design, but don't really know where to start, you've got most likely a conversational interface, on your work machine, on your personal mobile, that you can use to upskill a little bit. It's not as good as talking to Keith. Yeah, definitely not. But if you're looking to get started, or you're trying to decipher WCAG and figure out what it means, it can be really helpful for putting some of these really complicated requirements into the kind of plain English that that we all value, but then can be shared with teams and stakeholders and used to help evangelize a little bit. So I'd say definitely don't discount it as a learning tool if you're looking to get to grips with things and are worried about talking to an expert. You're like, I know so little, I don't even know where to start asking questions. Well, AI won't judge you. It will just, it can and will help, and at least give you that confidence so you can then go to the experts and develop your skills further.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. I've just got sort of a final question. We just want you all to give an idea of what's one thing that organizations should start doing to improve their accessibility. one thing that perhaps they could stop doing, and a good practical recommendations that they could apply in the short term, perhaps in the next 30 days or so.
Stop talking about it. That would probably be my number one thing. Don't just write papers. Don't rely on strategy papers to deliver this kind of work. I think the accessibility clinic for us is just something that can be done really quickly to raise momentum inside the organization as well. So that's been a big lever for us.
Hire people with lived experiences and accessibility needs and listen to them. Chances are, if you're a large organization, you already have those people. How can we harness all of that collective knowledge and wisdom from the inside to make sure that these messages are getting through and being reflected in the experiences we're creating? Yeah, stop just talking about it, start doing it.
Yeah. And Keith, any other thoughts and practical recommendations?
Absolutely. I'd like to echo what Jessica's just mentioned there. I think it's been an ongoing theme of this discussion, which is AI can never replace the human experience, and you really do need to involve disabled users at every phase of the product development lifecycle. Another thing that I'd like to recommend is to start treating accessibility as an ongoing operational activity and not just a one-time audit. Essentially, you need to kind of benchmark where you are periodically throughout the course of the year to understand where you sit in terms of compliance and legislation, and are you meeting the needs of your users. Stop treating accessibility as a last minute fix before launch. As we mentioned, it should be built into the product development lifecycle at every stage. And when it's missed out without any engagement from disabled participants, then that's when the cost of fixing things at a later stage are really going to amount. And the recommendation going forward, I think you could try going through a journey using a keyboard or a screen reader, a key journey on your website, just to understand what it is, what the experience is like for someone that relies on these tools to engage with digital services, and see what you can do and pinpoint to fix these issues.
Great. Well, thank you all very much. It's been very insightful to hear your experience. You've had quite a variety of different ways to try and raise awareness, make sure that accessibility is truly applied and built into your design systems and your processes, and the opportunities that are out there from AI, but also how do we actually implement such opportunities in a practical way that will really deliver value for the end users. So thank you all very much for sharing your thoughts and your experience on this. And thank you everyone else for coming to join us for this discussion. I hope you found it useful and you can put this information to use in your own organization. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.